What's going on, guys? Chandler here. So this is going to be my new segment on my YouTube channel called First Listen Review that is taken from my $5 tier full album reactions. So I react to the entire album, and then at the very end I give my overall thoughts and initial thoughts and a score on the album as a whole. So again, if you do like what you see and want to support the channel going forward, head over to patreon.com/ChandlerBurtonEntertainment. This is exclusive to the $5 tier. Again, you get a full album reaction, review, and a whole bunch of other perks as well if you guys are interested. And again, there's always a link down below in the description and in the pinned comment. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoy the review, and thank you all so much for watching. Dang, dude, that last song was a bit of an emotional, bit emotional for sure. I mean, this whole album was definitely an emotional journey for sure. I'm excited to talk about it. So again, we came as Romans, Darkbloom. Stick around for the first listen review if you want to hear my overall thoughts, and that is coming up next. So stick around for that. Alright, my friends, so again, that was We Came as Romans and their new album, Darkbloom. We just got done jamming the entire thing. Again, it's been over 5 years since their last album, Cold Like War, and for me personally, I really enjoyed this album. I think a lot of people may have problems with this album. When it comes to the music side, I think we all understand the emotional side of things. It's going to be a 10 out of 10. I think this is the best lyrics they've ever done when it comes to mental health and writing about Kyle and those types of things. So definitely I think that part's going to get a 10 out of 10 for everybody. But when it comes to the actual music, I feel like some people are going to be left a little bit empty. For me, though, I enjoyed the majority of it. So let's go and talk about the pros here, and we'll move on with the first listen review. So pro number one is that Dave's vocals are absolutely incredible on this album. This is his first full album where he's doing all the vocals. So again, as you all know, Kyle did the singing. Dave did the majority of, Dave did all the screaming, he did a little bit of singing. I think he started singing on Tracing Back the Roots, I believe. And his vocal capability has seriously just improved so much, like throughout him kind of just taking over, and that is completely true because I just saw these guys live with August Burns Red, Hollow Front, and Void of Vision, and Dave sounded incredible screaming and singing. I think a hot take here is that I actually prefer Dave's singing voice now over his screaming. Obviously, when you're screaming for so long, your voice kind of just has a little bit of tendency to wear out, but I feel like Dave's singing voice really is really good. I was like, dude, I actually like his singing better than his screaming. Not saying he's a bad screamer, really well-balanced vocalist, but overall, man, really good job on Dave's part. I can't imagine how hard and scary that would be, taking over the singing duties for a full-length album. He did absolutely fantastic, so huge props to him. The second big thing, we kind of just mentioned here in the beginning, is that you really feel the emotion on this album. There is a lot of mental health and obviously real life situations that happened during this time when they lost Kyle, and so a lot of it is just about depression. A lot of, like, the last half of the album is really just from, I think, Golden on, is really just about Kyle and kind of what they had to deal with losing their friend. And on Promise You, it sounds like Kyle, he was hooked up to machines and stuff. It sounds like he tried to take his own life and succeeded, of course. I don't know if that's the entire true story, but it sounds like with the last song, it really felt like they were trying to paint a picture of like this is what happened to Kyle. Like that's kind of what happened to him. And obviously that's just so sad. And it's so hard to see them try to go through that and continue to move on. So I just give them props for moving on as a band and keep trying. I mean, that's totally an amazing thing, and they put out a really good album because of it here. So really, you could feel the emotion on this album, and I think they do a really good job with the lyrics. Just an incredible album here. And I would also say with this album, it's a very well-paced album. Like, it's not overly long, it's not too short. Every song is placed in a really good spot, and so I feel like the pacing of this album is really good. And each song, in my personal opinion, does sound a little bit different, so that kind of helps the pacing with this album. But yeah, man, the emotion on this album, Dave's voice, and just everything about it, I think really worked for Darkbloom. While I really did enjoy this album, I do have some cons with the album that I just kind of found as I was listening to it for the first time through. I would say number one, this is not a big deal for me. I want to put in there for other people who may feel this way, that if you're looking for a really like intense metalcore type album, like, you know, like older We Came as Romans, or even like their last album, Cold Like War, had some bangers on there. You're probably not going to get that. There's only like really two super heavy songs in the album, which would be Daggers and Doublespeak, and so those are like the two heaviest songs on the album. And so if you're not a fan of that, you may actually like be really disappointed in this album, because a lot of it is kind of light. There are heavier elements sprinkled within some of the songs here, but overall, if you're looking for like a straightforward heavy album, kind of like their first two albums, you're probably not going to get that. So this album is not going to do anything too crazy. If you are looking for something new or something heavy from this band, you may actually be a little bit disappointed when it comes to the music side of things. I think, again, we all understand the emotion side of things, but when it comes to the instrumentals and stuff, you may be a little disappointed. And kind of talking more of the instrumentals and some other stuff here, I personally thought the electronic elements didn't work very well for me on this album. I really felt like it was overused, especially on, like, for example, Doublespeak. Like, there's a cool song within Doublespeak where, you know, it's just your kind of typical metalcore song, which sounded really cool. Dave's screaming vocals sounded really cool, but it was just weighed down by so many weird electronic elements, and they didn't even really sound cool. It just sounded kind of really cheesy and, like, out of place. And I'm cool with bands using, like, electronic elements here, but when it's overused, I just feel like they're using it to, like, kind of cover up a generic metalcore song. And so, in my personal opinion, I just felt like the electronic elements were a little bit overused on this album. And I would say another thing that this album kind of struggles with a little bit for me personally is that I feel like this album really kind of has like an identity crisis. Like, I feel like they're trying to be Linkin Park, Bring Me the Horizon, and Architects all in one. There's a really cool, interesting clip that I wanted to play from Finn McKenty, which he kind of talks about with Wage War.
This is where they went like full, as they say, Linkin Parkitects, where it's like Architects verses with Linkin Park choruses.
And that's kind of how I feel about this album. Like, they're just trying to combine all these elements of like all these other artists, in my personal opinion. While it still feels like We Came as Romans, I just feel like some of the songs really sound like Linkin Park, especially with a lot of the choruses and a lot of the riffs and those types of things. That a lot of it sounds like Bring Me the Horizon, and then they have like Architects type riffs in their songs, which again, I think it's really cool to show your influences, absolutely. But I felt like on some of the songs on this album, there was a little bit of an identity crisis, trying to figure out like what they wanted to sound like. Overall, still really good song, and I really enjoyed this album. Just something that I noticed listening to it for the first time. That may change when I listen to it again, but I kind of just picked that up as I was listening through it on the first initial listen. So my top 3 favorite songs from this album here. Again, I really enjoyed the majority of this album here. I would say, number 1, It's Still Gotta Be Golden. Again, I actually heard that song well before anyone else, because, again, Sharp Tone Records sent that song to me early. I love the riff on that here. Again, that's a song where it sounds like Linkin Parkitects, where it's like a riff for like Architect and a, you know, kind of a Linkin Park type singing choruses, those types of things. So overall, though, I really like that song. I think it's really powerful, and I think it's a really emotional song. Really, really good song. Also, I really like the anchor. I kept saying throughout that song that one felt like old We Came as Romans, new We Came as Romans, and then a little of the electronics like mixed in with the background here. That song was perfect. Again, nothing too crazy, but I really, really enjoyed that song. And then honestly, I really like Holding the Embers. I love that breakdown that they throw in there. I thought that was a really cool like throwback to some of their older stuff here. And that chorus was absolutely phenomenal. Probably my favorite chorus on the album. I thought they did a really good job with that song. Again, those are my top 3 songs you'll listen to on the first initial listen. But again, I do plan on listening to this album a little bit more, and maybe my opinion will change. But again, those are the top 3 songs that stuck out to me on the first time listening to Darkbloom. Now, before I give my overall thoughts and a score on the album, I do want to read a little bit of an article that Joshua, the guitar player of the band, did say about Darkbloom. I will put it on screen for you guys to follow here. It says, "The idea of Darkbloom is that even through the darkest, most difficult times of life, there is still potential or possibility of growth," guitarist / vocalist Joshua Moore explained last year upon the release of the album's title track. "As long as we're not willing to completely concede to the negative emotion or thought that feels like it has has taken over, then we can be strong enough to overcome and push through to a different future. I think that's really cool, man. Again, I think everyone's going to agree the emotion on this album is absolutely a 10 out of 10. Nobody's ever going to knock that here. I thought they did a really good job of being super open with these materials, because again, it can be hard, especially after losing a tragic, after losing your friend. It's absolutely tragic. We all know death is a part of life. We all pass on eventually. But it's still really hard to lose somebody. Like, I'm not gonna, obviously we can't knock that. Losing somebody is very difficult. I've lost a lot of people in my life, and it's very hard. Even though I know it's a part of life, it's still very, very difficult. And it sounds like with Kyle's situation, the way that he went was, of course, even more sad, and of course, We Came As Romans was a very popular band, and I thought they did a really good job of, like, keep pushing forward. Keep trying, with Dave taking over the vocals and still making an album, even though it took 5 years. Completely understandable. They probably had to go through so much to kind of just deal with the loss of their friend. So the emotion on this album, I really think, is going to help people. If you are struggling with mental health, or you feel like you want to die, make sure you just tell somebody. Like, I've learned in my life that the most simple things in life can make a big difference. So, for example, if you are struggling and you feel like you want to die or commit suicide, tell somebody, because when you tell somebody, I promise you, the feeling that you're feeling that will just be released, and you'll tell somebody that you love, and they're not going to judge you. They're just going to want to love you, and they're there to listen. And so if you are struggling, you just got to tell somebody, whether it's your mom, your dad. I remember telling my mom when I was 23 years old, I struggled with depression like most of my entire life, and I finally opened up to my mom when I was about 23 years old, and I was like, I am struggling, and I don't feel like I belong here on this earth. And that's when I took the step to go to therapy, to take medication, to try to find things that will make me feel better. And ever since telling my mom, I do struggle. I'm not going to deny that, but it's definitely gotten a lot better. So I promise you from personal experience that if you tell somebody when you're struggling, you're going to feel that relief off your shoulders, and then we could take the next step to get you the help that you need to live the best life that you can. I think this album is really good. I think it does struggle a little bit with, kind of a musical identity crisis, because again, they're trying to combine like 3 bands into one. But again, with the emotion and the guitar work and like everything worked for me personally here. This is not my favorite We Came As Romans album. It is, like, when it comes to like the lyrics and stuff, but overall, man, I really enjoyed this album. I think this is going to help a lot of people who are struggling. I am going to give this album, We Came As Romans Darkbloom, a 7 out of 10. I think it's really solid all the way through. Again, the electronic elements were a little overused for me here. And again, some of the songs had a little bit of an identity crisis, but overall, man, I think this album was worth the 5-year wait. And I think they did a really, really good job with this album.